Welcome back. And I promised you this time that we would go more into the whole question of the light that Alain gives. Now remember, your course books are this one, which is Alain Forget's How to Get Out of This World Alive, and it's his experiences as he was working on himself spiritually, and then his final breakthrough, and he's got some wonderful references in it, so I'd recommend it. And this is my book, Shining Light on Transcendence, and it's really working with Alain and gives you a sort of practical. And what I would like you to do is tell me whether you find slides helpful or not. Let me thank all those people who made comments and asked questions after the last video. Yes, my wife and I and Casper are all very well. We are in fact in Scotland, and it's really nice where we are. We're up in the hills at 900 feet, and so we're certainly shielded from the worst of the coronavirus. You will remember, or will have seen, or will not have seen in the comments on the last one, that Alan Pring's grandson contacted and made some comments about non-duality and the fact that non-duality is timeless, which is absolutely right. There's no doubt about that. But Alan Pring was one of the first teachers I had way back in the early 90s, late 80s, when we were looking at early 90s, late 80s, when we were looking at near-death experiences, and his was one of the deepest near-death experiences that, in fact, I think that in all the series I have, and I must have had about 600 now, his was very nearly the deepest, so it was very nice to meet his grandson. Hi. Well, let's then start with the fact that if you sit in front of somebody and you see light, what does that mean? Well, it could mean, so this all could be imagination. So keep it firmly in just a psychological thing of some sort between you and the person. So this all could be imagination. So keep it firmly in mind that when I see light and I hear reports from other people that they see light, are they just, in fact, imagining it? And so we're going to look at this, a little bit about the history of light, and we'll come to a conclusion at the end as to whether we are imagining this or not. Okay, so here then is the first slide. Well, here is Alain Forget. You can see these white sort of blobs I've put on the slide. They're just to illustrate that he is able to induce the experience of light in those who are around him when he meditates. If you ask him if he meditates, he'd say no. He steps back into the void. So when he steps back into the void, he does nothing, but the light phenomena appear. So what are these light phenomena? That is our main question. Is it imagination, or what brain, EEG and functional MRI changes occur when light is being given? First of all, in Alain himself, and secondly, in his student, when we look at that using EEG only. What are the brain interactions between the teacher and the student? Are they somehow coupled, if it's true? What are the long-term effects of receiving the light? And what is this light energy? So a lot of questions which we have to look at. Light phenomena, they have a very long history of association with meditation, spiritual experience, and death. We'll just have a very quick look at those. I've chosen this slide. It's St. Francis in the Chariot of Light while meditating, and it's in the chapel in Assisi where St. Francis is buried. You can see the monks looking in awe at this. In other words, it's a very good way of saying that St. Francis gave out light when he was meditating. Here is a common experience of people nowadays who go for meditation retreats. It was published in 2014 by Lindahl, and he explains what light was to him. I was just bursting with light. I would just close my eyes and it was just brilliant light. I just felt like I was radiating, like there were rays of light coming out of me. It felt like it was just emanating from my body and my system. But this wasn't my entire retreat by any means. It was just near the end. So he had to have a certain meditation load before he experienced light. Now, if you go to the meditation literature, really following Lindahl's paper, there have been a number published about the quality and nature of light during meditation. The third one that I want to look at is light at the time of death. Now, we have touched on this. Remember, there's this massive change in consciousness at the time of death. So, what do you get? Sometimes you get radiant light in the room. Who sees it? The carers and the family. Or white light surrounding the patient as they died. You get transfiguring light over the patient, either white or gold. Globules of light in the room at the time of death. And sources of light, not electric light, which go out when the patients take their last breath. And that last quote came from a chaplain who sat with many people and seen this. But again, do remember that death is not just a simple switching off. It is a massive change in consciousness, and many non-local phenomena occur at the time of death. So what about this light of Alain's? Well, those of you who want to read his book, How to Get Out of This World Alive, it details his whole philosophy. And what is interesting is that about 50% of novices, that is people who've never been exposed to Alain before, can see the light on their first acquaintance with him when he steps back into the void. So what is the subjective experience of the students seeing light? Well, very much what you would expect. It's a little bit like the paper from Lindahl. White and coloured light seen surrounding Alain. Very strong light in the room. Changes in the density of the air in the room, which becomes coloured, often purple. Light forms like globules or sparkles. Colours on Alain, on hands and face. And the development of consciousness in the students. So, the subjective, this is what the students feel. And remember, we're trying to distinguish between imagination in the students and a real effect. So what did they feel when they experience this light? But here you'll see I have energy, because it seems to be that there's the light phenomena and then there's this energy phenomena. Energy being transferred from Alain to the students, energy entering the body, heart or abdominal area, energy circulating up the spine, energy dissolving blocks in its free flow through the body, and energy leading to opening of the heart. So it's like the light, but it's different because you don't see it, you feel it. What are the physical features of the light? And what we all want to know is if you take a camera, there we are, camera, shows no light around Alan. The first thing I did was to take a camera and photograph him when he's stepped back into the void. And the light phenomena are seen by those around him, but the camera doesn't see it. So this means that it's either something which only affects our brains, or it's something which the frequency profile of the camera is not sensitive to. If you look at Alan, it enhances the light you see. If you make your eye focus soft, then that increases the brightness. Now, this is quite contradictory. It's enhanced by a brightly lit room. Now, this is most interesting because you would expect it to be diminished, but it's not. So again, there's something interesting going on here. It's attenuated by a double glazed door. So Alan one side, the person who's receiving it on the other. Almost abolished by complete darkness. Now, again, quite counterintuitive because it should be brighter in almost complete darkness. So I think what we're thinking here is that you see it when there's a lot of light and you see it less strongly when there's little light. So clearly the ambient light in the room affects the process. So let's see what the students think when they're asked to say what they saw in when the light is given in the darkness. It's a marked reduction in the strength of the light, as I've said, but there is a reduction in colours and other phenomena. So really one needs to try and explain that too. So first thing, imagination or not? Well, here in a laboratory in London University, you can see Alain with his back to us and having a cap put on with the EEG channels. And there's the student, and you see the two of them are facing each other. But when the signals are given, then the person stands behind Alain or behind the student. If Alain is giving the given the signal that he has to meditate, of course the person stands behind the student, so the student can't know what's happening. Okay, so here is a very good example of Alain giving his light energy, and you can see there's nothing in the photograph that would indicate this, but I just used this photograph to show the translucent blocking goggles, and this altered the coupling between the people. Well, imagination? Absolutely not. Power spectral density at the parietal electrodes shows this very high gamma activity, which is mainly on the left side, certainly at the lower frequencies. And if you go to the frontal region, there's very little of that activity. Let's look at that in a little bit more detail. This is now, these columns are Alain, and these columns are student 1 and student 2. And this tells you what the frequency is. If the colours go warmer, then the activity is stronger. Well, with delta activity, very little difference between Alain and the students. Theta activity, just a little bit in the left posterior region where the activity is going to be seen. Alpha, again, a little bit there, but not so much. The student has a little bit of alpha activity. And if we now look at the faster frequencies, this is the beta range, 12 to 30 hertz, then you can see straight away that Alain is putting out a lot of power at this frequency, some of which is reciprocated or mimicked, if you like, by the students. And here you can see in the range 35 to 45 cycles a second, huge amounts of gamma activity, and right up to 70 hertz in this picture, but as you can see in this, that's 100 hertz. The activity from the back, which is this activity around here, goes on very much longer. So we have been able to answer a very important question. Imagination, no, there are very, very clear factors affecting the light when Alain steps back into the void. So we've done some studies of coupling between students and Alain, and there's no doubt at all that there is a strong coupling at different frequencies between Alain and the students, but we won't do that today. So what we're saying is that the gamma activity and beta activity is more prominent in the left posterior temporal leads. Very high amplitude of gamma there. Spreads forward at higher frequencies, and it's very unusual. So, well, you can see a number of things from that presentation. The first thing is that it's definitely not imagination. There are huge electrical changes in Alain's brain and in the students' brains, although Alain's is 10 times higher than the students, and they're not imagining it. So there is something real going on here. So what is this? Well, we've got certain clues. First of all, you can't photograph it with the camera. And secondly, and more important, is that it doesn't obey all the rules of light. It's in a darkened room, it's not brighter. In a lit room, it is experienced as brighter. And these are strange things. It makes one think much more that it is, in fact, some activity straight into the visual cortex. So when the visual cortex is activated by outside light, so is the light that Alain gives activated as well. So then we have to take this seriously, and it then joins the great band of light giving from other sources at the time of death, when there's a huge consciousness shift. And when you meditate, Alain, remember, says he doesn't meditate, he goes into the void. I think it's similar, but you just take what people say. And it's also occurs with occasional people like this, like Alain. So all these factors make it a really interesting area or topic for discussion and study, and I'll come back to you next time with a little bit more about light. If any of you got any comments or questions, I will try and answer them. It's much easier now, of course, because of our age, my wife and I, to some extent, Casper, are all shielding. In fact, he is 11. So if you take 7 years to one cat year, then he's 77. So yeah, he should be shielding too. Sorry he's not here with you today, but he didn't want to come in and say hi for some catty reason. So, very nice seeing you all again, and I hope to be back in about a week's time with another video for you. Thanks. Okay, goodbye.